Hey, hockey fans, welcome to the 7-Eleven Overtime Podcast. I'm your host, Gino Retta. You know, I've spent 4 decades or more working the game of hockey. Fortunate enough to meet some of the great legends of the game, saw them come into the league, watched them shine in the game, and now they've moved on to life after the game. The 7-Eleven Overtime Podcast gives us a chance to catch up, tell some great stories, relive some great memories, and hear what they're up to today. Today's legend, first overall pick back in 2002, 6-time NHL All Star, 2-time Olympic Gold Medalist. And now he's the director of player development for the Columbus Blue Jackets. He's Rick Nash. Rick, great to have you here, my friend. I'm looking forward to catching up with you.
I'm looking forward to it as well. It's always nice to see a familiar face, and me being here in Columbus, I don't get to see you guys too much, but you're a legend yourself, and I'm happy to spend this time with you.
Oh, good one. Full disclosure, Rick and I have known each other for many, many years. I knew you before you even were drafted. So you and I have had a relationship for many years, and I've seen so much. And you're the epitome of one of these great stories where I've been so happy to watch a guy come up through minor hockey, have tremendous stature in your career and accomplish what you've done. Do you sometimes stop yourself and say, I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe I still got this Blue Jackets logo on me, director of player development for an NHL organization right now? Are these things that you even would have imagined as a kid growing up playing the game?
No, not at all, Gino. It's funny because you think about where we've grown up and where you live now, and you think about how many kids play hockey and how many families are kind of involved in the minor hockey, and how many kids' dream is to make the NHL.
Yeah.
And when you start going through the numbers and seeing how many kids actually make it and have successful careers, it's not too many. So I consider myself very lucky, as a kid from Brampton that just had a huge dream, and going to play in the MTHL and GTHL, and kind of following it, and you never know when it's actually real. And then you go off to junior, and you start seeing yourself on some of these scouting lists and these red line reports, and then it hits, and you get drafted. But the one thing I can say is I cannot believe how fast it went. I mean, I remember going to George Bell Arena like it was yesterday for Friday night Marley games, and now I'm sitting here, 4 years out of my career, trying to work my way up the hockey ops situation, and it's just crazy. But I find myself fortunate every single day that I get to wear the Blue Jacket logo and come to work and try to bring a Stanley Cup to Columbus.
We're going to get to your career in a minute, but I do want to talk to you about the hockey ops thing, just on the heels of something the commissioner, Gary Bettman, the poor guy is trying to campaign all over the league right now, saying there's no such thing as tanking. Nobody tanks. No, like, it just is not a real thing. Your Blue Jackets right now, the Hawks, the Ducks, to some extent, the Montreal Canadiens, guys who are cleaning house right now because everybody's watching. The last time the Jackets had a first overall pick was you, and nobody since then. And now they're in a very real battle potentially for Connor Bedard first overall. We've seen, and we'll talk about the way you became the face of an organization, the face of a franchise, really the face of a region in hockey, with what you're able to accomplish and what you're able to do. What's the hockey market like in Columbus right now? What are they talking about locally? Are they saying, guys, let's just tank? Connor Bedard's out there for us. What's the chatter right now?
Well, it's interesting because I think you know this better than anyone, and I'm sure we'll get into it later. But Columbus has never had a first overall pick. Columbus traded up for.
They got it. Yeah, look at the smile on your face. Yeah, that's a great story. We'll tell that story.
Yeah. So interestingly, Columbus has never has been awarded a first overall pick from the start of the lottery, or whatever you want to call it. But you know what? With that being in the news the last few days, I'm kind of at an interesting stance on it, because I can still see it from a player standpoint, and I can see it now from a management standpoint. And I can only speak for myself and obviously our organization, but I couldn't imagine management coming down to the room and asking guys to tank. Or
no, but Rick, that's not what you got. And that's not what management does, though, right? Management just, and rightfully so, you're saying what's best for our organization. And if what's best for our organization right now is to not necessarily give yourself the best chance to win short term, that's okay, is it not?
Yeah, but I think you're on. I think it's on a fine line right here, and there's no question. Would the first overall pick help the organization?
Yeah.
100%. There is no question whatsoever. There's been some great fifth overalls and fifth round and sixth round picks that have
Yeah.
been organization changing too. But there's no question that if you get the first overall pick, it's going to be a big deal for your city, for your organization. It could help out in a long, long run of your team being a good team. On the tanking purpose, I just can't see it, and I can't think of players coming to the rink every day. And I know that's not what you're saying, but at the same time, that's what the news is, and I can't see it, but in saying that, if you're in a hockey up situation and you have this great draft with generational players, there's no question you would want that first overall pick. But you have to be very careful with your fans, with your season ticket holders, on how you get there. And at the same time, these guys are going to battle every single night and playing these games. Like our team had a great game in Edmonton last night with the big overtime win. But I think the NHL is in a tough position with all the headlines that you mentioned. But that's a really tough thing to see from the inside.
Yeah, but you know what though? In fairness, and I understand what you're saying, that you're trying to respect your fan base, but sometimes your fan base is saying this is what we want. I mean, nowhere is that more obvious right now than it is in Vancouver, where the Vancouver fan base is saying we don't want to retool, we want to rebuild. Let's get this thing fixed. Let's get this thing turned around. Let's not be afraid of, Canuck fans are thinking, look, Bedard's from here. It'd be great to have them in the lineup. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But what is important, and you kind of alluded to this, and I want to get onto this now, is sometimes when an organization says this is a guy we desperately need, and they go out and do what they desperately needed. Doug MacLean was the general manager of the Blue Jackets back when everybody was saying you were going to be the first overall pick, but the Jackets only had third overall pick. Walk those who maybe don't recall through what happened there on draft day, literally on the draft floor.
Yeah, it really is a cool story. And just at my jersey retirement last year in March, Doug MacLean came in and spoke at the jersey retirement. And it's funny how my version and his version are so different. But I think we all know Doug in the hockey world. And
Doug,
anyway,
by the way, for those of you who don't know him, Doug's a legend of the game, was management for years and years, a great guy from PEI, wonderful, wonderful heart, and just retired just a couple of years ago.
I think the coolest thing about it is that every time I tell the story is that you are the key component of this whole story. And it started the night before the draft, and I
didn't know you were going to give the me part away. I thought you were just going to deal with the other part of it.
Yeah, and I had my final meetings the night before, and I was meeting with Columbus. They were my last meeting, and Doug just expressed how bad he wanted me in Columbus. And for me and Joe Resnick, we kind of looked at the depth charts of the other teams that were before, and it was obviously Florida and Atlanta at the time. And we knew Florida kind of had Stephen Weiss in the draft before, and then Atlanta had Heatley and Kovalchuk. And with Columbus, they had Klesla and Leclerc, which was a goalie and a defenseman. So we thought Columbus was the perfect fit too. And that's how I kind of expressed it to Doug. And we shook hands, and I told him that I would kind of love to be a Blue Jacket, and he had this look on his face and this look on his eye that it seemed like something was going to happen. And we get to the ACC, or Scotiabank, what it's called now, in Toronto for the draft the next morning. And I felt like I was sitting there for about 2 hours before, and it was probably only about 15 minutes. And I'll never forget, there was about 10 minutes on the clock before Florida, the draft would start, and Florida would make their first pick overall. And sitting there with my mom and dad, and here comes you running up the stairs to me, and you tap me on the leg, and I remember you telling me, you're not going to believe this, but Columbus just traded up for the first overall pick. And nothing was announced yet, or anything. And I don't even know if we had smartphones, so I don't know how you were working the phone lines or what you were doing. But
I cannot reveal my sources.
Yeah, lo and behold, about 4 minutes later, I think Gary Bettman came on and said we have a trade to announce. So it's a story that's honestly stuck with me my whole career, how that whole process went down. And I'm not trying to blow smoke, towards you, but you were a big part of it.
Well, thanks, man. It was a lot of fun. And it was, to me, the point of the story I was trying to make, and I appreciate how gracious you're, this is how desperately the organization wanted you and how they looked at you as a guy that could literally be a game changer. Now, in hindsight, we see how you were. We see what you did to that community, what you did in terms of popularizing hockey in a community that really wasn't very popular. And you've seen a lot of what's come of it. And you stepped right in and you honored what they were looking for. And you tell us about your NHL debut. You opening your first game now, you signed your NHL contract, your entry-level deal. 3 days later, you're making your NHL debut. Tell the fans about what happened that night.
Yeah, what's interesting about coming to a market where, obviously they wanted me and I was happy to be here because I thought it was the best opportunity and kind of the fast track for me to the NHL. But one of the strange things was growing up in Toronto, and I mean, I would be lucky. I used to get to go to one game a year for one of my best friend's birthday parties, and that was it. And it was just me and him. His dad would drop us off at Yorkdale, and then we would take the subway. And this is when we were 10 or 11 years old, down to the game. So we would get there early. We'd watch warm up. I remember one time I went to a game with my dad, and we waited outside that back door at the Maple Leaf Gardens and waiting for an NHLer to come out just to try to meet them. And it never really happened. And just to answer your question from earlier, then I get to Columbus, and there's people at our practices. We're talking to them before practice, after practice. They're waiting outside by the car. So you're signing autographs by the car. And it was so different. That
accessibility, right?
Exactly. That's exactly what it was. Yeah. And it did take a little while for me to understand that in Toronto and huge hockey markets, you don't really have to sell the game to the fans. They're going to come no matter what. But in a fresh market like Columbus, we really had to sell the game and have those conversations with fans after practice and outside your car. So it was really hard to get used to, but I kind of figured it out fast that to put people in the arena and get excited about hockey and grow the minor hockey and to see where it is today. Those were the things that you had to do early on. And people from Toronto sometimes find that hard to understand, which I did at the start. But to go on to my first NHL game, it was incredible. We Joe Resnick and Gord Kirk, we finally got the contract done, a couple days before. And I remember getting ready to go to warm up in my first NHL game, and I put my helmet on and strapped it up and started to walk out. And Tyler Wright, who was a legendary Blue Jacket, came over and looked at me and he said, "Why are you putting your helmet on?" And I said, "Well, it's warm up." He goes, "Yeah, but you're the first overall pick." He goes, "We need our fans to see.
We need to see
our
you.
First overall pick." And
that's awesome.
So it was a story that stuck with me. I went out there for warm up. I had my whole family there, and ended up scoring a goal my first NHL game. And I still remember walking out of the tunnel and just all these flashbacks of playing road hockey, playing in gym class, just shooting pucks in my garage and in my basement, and it all just kind of felt real that I achieved my dream.
It was awesome. And of course, obviously, we're back here still tracking everything that you're doing, not only as a broadcaster, but somebody who's really interested in your particular career. And I remember it was one of the first years I was hosting That's Hockey, because I had hosted Sports Center for 20 years. And then I shifted over to That's Hockey either the year you were drafted or maybe the year just before. And we would bring on guests onto the show to talk to the, players and general managers and stuff. And I thought it'd be great to get Nash on the show. Here's a guy, we saw him get drafted first overall. You had a pretty solid rookie season. You were a finalist for the Calder, which was awesome, but you were on fire in your sophomore year. You score 41. You were tied that year. Now, I don't want to get this wrong. Remind me, you were tied for the Rocket with Aginla and Kovalchuk, right?
Correct.
You guys, all three of you guys had 41. And you were just 19 years old, which is amazing. So I thought, let's get him on the show. So we call your PR team. We say, we want to get Rick Nash on the show. The PR guy calls me back a day later and says, Nash said he'll do it. It's okay. But why would you want to do an interview with him? Do you remember this story?
No, keep going.
No. He says, why would you want to? I said, well, because he's having a great year. And he goes, well, apparently you called him super soft. And I went, what? I said, what are you talking about? I never called Nash super soft. I don't believe he is. So why would I call him that? So I'm having this conversation with my producer at that point, Jeff Mott, and he goes, no, we did a feature on him yesterday calling him, he's having a super sophomore year. And I remember that. I'm like, I said, you could not be further from the truth. And the guy didn't know what I was talking about. And I said, just get Nasher on the air. I'll explain and we'll tell the story. And we told the story. This was like now 20 years ago. But I had you on the show and it was hilarious because it was the complete opposite of what I was saying. You were a super sophomore, not super soft. Do you remember that at all?
Now that you say it, it kind of hits home, the whole story and you having the breakdown. But I still, maybe the organization was mad at you and didn't catch on to it.
It was funny.
Being here in Columbus, they couldn't figure it out because I would never see myself turning down a
No.
interview for good or bad. But now that you say the super soft part, I kind of remember having some sort of discussion with our PR team here, but that's classic. I could never get mad at you. Or
no. But seriously, how are you going to get me at 41 that season? What was that like to suddenly go? I mean, 17 your rookie season was very solid. To go to 41 with Kovalchuk and Iginla, two legendary goal scorers in the league. At that point, you realize I can do this.
Yeah, you know what? I scored 42 once with the Rangers, and that was the only time that I scored more goals in that year. And I'm telling you, I think my average ice was at like 14 minutes. When I scored 41, I'd have to go back and check, but I'm telling you, everything went in, and I was playing, I believe, with David Vyborny, who was a really skilled player, and I think it was Andrew Castles or Mike Sillinger, who's Cole Sillinger's dad now, who plays for our team, but. I think Andrew
make you feel old when you have to say stuff like that.
Just a little bit. Andrew Castles was from Bramalea, and I was from Brampton, and we lived beside each other here in Columbus, and we just kind of created a bond. And that season, everything went in, and it's funny, people still come up to me and ask me that question, and I don't have an answer for them other than it was a lot of luck, it was a lot of work, it was a lot of going to the hard.
Yeah, sure. Hold on a second. You're making it sound like a one-off. Like you did have that 42 year. You had a string of from 03, 04, where 7 of 8 years you were 30 plus goals. You're one of the most prolific goal scorers in the NHL for about a decade. So it wasn't just a one-off season. Yeah, the 41 was a big thing, but you were scoring in the 30s year after year after year.
Well, yes, and I truly think it was a different NHL back then too. No one was putting up 60 or 65 or 55 every year. It felt like it was a lot tougher to score, and you had to work a lot harder for your goals. Now, I'm not taking anything away.
That's when guys could still grab you.
Yeah, you could take a water ski right behind you easily. But you know what? Those seasons were awesome, and then the 41 when I co-won the Rocket Richard. I always went back to if my defensive game was better and I was on the ice at the end of games when we were winning, I could have added 4 or 5 empty netters. And that's the thing that's always impressed me is I didn't have one empty netter. And I think Jerome and Ilya had a few, and I wish there was a tiebreak or something, but
that should have been the tiebreaker. No, you just got to, right. Okay, let's eliminate empty netters.
Yes, and I don't know exactly how many empty netters they had. They might not have had any either, but it was still to get to know Jerome over the years. It was a cool award to share with him that our names will always be in history. But I'm not trying to be overly humble and say it was luck, but I'm telling you from someone that loves to score goals, and I will never feel that rush of scoring an NHL goal that I miss so much to this day. Everything went in those years that I scored over 40. The ones that shouldn't have went in, and the ones that should have went in too. So it was I was just amazed by that.
You mentioned Jerome, and right away 2010 comes to mind. He had a pretty good run at the Olympics, so did you. So the Vancouver, you got to play in 3 different Olympic games. 06 was 06, but then golds in 2010 and 2014. I want to ask you specifically about 2010 in Vancouver, playing for Olympic gold on home ice, being a proud Canadian that you were at that point. What was that entire experience like for you?
Yeah, you know what? It was really cool. To start, in 2002, I remember watching Salt Lake City from the training room in
Yeah,
the old ice house in London.
yeah,
And fast forward 4 years in 2006, I felt like they brought a lot of the same guys that they did in 2002, and I was kind of inserted in it as a new wave of Canadian talent. And I didn't play very much, but it was still really cool to be around all those guys that were in 2002. And then obviously we didn't have the success, and it was not the best feeling coming back to Canada after getting beat out in the quarters. And then I remember showing up for the 2010 training camp and in the summer camp, and then getting announced to the team, and going in 2010. And I remember just everyone talking about the pressure, and that was the
yeah.
one thing that stuck
Because you're
out.
on home ice.
You're on home ice. You finished, what did we, sixth or seventh in the Torino one.
Yeah,
So I remember, the coaches and the management coming in before and saying, we have to downplay this pressure or else it's going to eat at us.
yeah,
So, just go out there and try to peg that message to the media that, it's not that much pressure. But I'm telling you, the pressure in that room was crazy. How we couldn't have done anything other than a gold medal, that the Canadian fan base, and true to ourselves, that we would have been happy with. So the couple of things that stick out for that tournament was the game versus Russia. I still think the building was louder that game than it was for the gold medal game.
yeah.
Just the whole history behind it, and the way we won that game was incredible. And then the next thing that jumps out was the overtime intermission, between the end of the third and going into overtime in the gold medal game. We were sitting there, and I think we had 8 or 9 captains of their club team in that room. And it was almost like nothing needed to be said. It was pretty quiet in there. A few of the older guys spoke up and stuck to the basics. But as I tell everyone, and I truly felt walking into the dressing room in between, that the story was already written.
Yeah.
You already knew who was going to score the goal. You already knew. And I think I had one time when I was coming down the right wing, I pulled up, I shot at low blocker, and Miller just made the save. But
Yeah.
I always told myself, I'm like, that was never going to go in no matter what. The story was already written
Yeah.
that Sid would score the golden goal.
Yeah, it was spectacular. I was in the building obviously for that entire tournament and that game, and it was like nothing I'd ever seen. We're in conversation with two-time Olympic gold medalist, six-time NHL Hockey Hall of Famer Rick Nash. This is the 7-Eleven Overtime Podcast. I'm your host, Gino Reda. You had a pretty prolific international career. I mean, when I look back at all the stuff you did, 3 times at the Olympics, 2 gold medals, gold, 2 silver at the Worlds, silver at the World Junior. What was it like to basically, from the start to end of your career, to always be a guy that Hockey Canada, that Canada was calling on when it came to the international stage? What was that like for you?
Yeah, it was always an honor. Funny enough, me and Scott Salmon were just talking about this again, because he called me, him and Shane Doan asked me if I wanted to do the AGM job last year at the World Championships. And I told Scott, I said, well, I've never said no to you before,
Yeah.
so I'm not going to say no now. So that's come full circle. But for me, growing up as a huge hockey fan in Toronto, there was nothing greater than representing your country. I am so patriotic. I love to tell people that I'm Canadian, even though I live in the States. It's just I love my country, and I'm happy to put on that jersey. It's funny now that I'm in development, is I'll watch my players play for their club team, and then I'll go to a World Juniors or World Championships, and I'll see them elevate their game. And now this is like the tricky thing where
I know.
I'm telling
How
you,
do you say that to him? Like, can you bring a little of that back here?
that's exactly what I'm getting at. So it's easy, and I know personally, to elevate your game for 7 to 9 games when you're putting on a red and white jersey or whatever your country's colors are. And the hard thing is going back after these Olympic gold medals or world championships, and then playing the same way for your club team at a more consistent basis. So it's a little tricky, but it's just funny that we're talking about that, and it's stuff that I'm going through now. But the gold medals are probably a highlight of my career, and playing for Hockey Canada is a highlight of my career. And every time they came knocking for world championships or whatever it might be, I would always commit to them, and they've been a big part of my career.
That's awesome. I want to reflect back on some special moments that stand out in my mind, and I would think they stand out in your mind as well. So give me your thoughts on them as we reflect back on them. First, I can't ignore the goal. I'm going to call it the goal against the Coyotes back in January of 2008. It was such a gorgeous goal. It was the goal of the year in the NHL. As a matter of fact, you were a finalist in the ESPYs for the overall best top 4 sports plays of that calendar year. Tell our audience about that goal and what your memories were of that.
Yeah, I don't want to say one goal can define your career, but this almost did define my career. This
Yeah,
goal,
it was pretty freaking awesome.
this goal is almost bigger than my career, and to this day, it truly is kind of the first thing that anyone wants to talk about is what happened during that goal, and I love it because everything had to go right. And about a minute before I scored that goal, 2 minutes before, I took a high sticking penalty, and the Phoenix Coyotes scored on the power play to tie up the game. And I didn't feel too good about it, and wanted to try to do something about it. Obviously, I didn't think I could do that, but it was a high flip pass that came out, and it was kind of a broken play. And I grabbed the puck, and there's 2 defenders. And I walked both defenders with the exact same move. It was a simple move that me and my old Toronto Marley coach, Keith Kerrigan, used to work on, was a quick outside in and then back to the outside. And then I went around the goalie, and the goalie actually made a great play because he poke checked me, and he got the puck, and the puck rolled up my shin pad and dropped right there for me to put it in. And it was like it was meant to be. And it still sticks with me. And the craziest thing was, after that game, we flew right to Dallas. And I think we were on a back-to-back. And I remember waking up at about 10 a.m. or whatever it was, because we got in late from Phoenix. And my phone at the time was just 50 missed calls, 10 of them being from our PR guy, just having to do all these interviews. And I was like, okay, that goal might have been bigger than I thought it was. And that was kind of the aha moment that next morning when I saw all the missed calls and missed messages.
We had you on the show. We had you on the show that next day to talk about it. It's one of the times that your PR guy said, yeah, of course he'll be on right away. It'll be great.
Yeah, he wasn't mad at you this time.
Yeah, no, he wasn't. No, if you want to, for our viewers and our listeners, if you want to see the goal, basically just Google Rick Nash, SB Goal of the Year finalist, and you'll find it. You'll see it right away. Another special moment that had to be for you was when they handed you the captaincy in Columbus. All that you had done, raising the prominence and the profile of the organization. How did you find out you were getting the C, and what was that conversation like, and what did that mean to you?
Yeah, it meant a lot to me. I felt like, as we talked about earlier, kind of coming in to Columbus and being the face of the franchise, and trying to grow the game, which I really did take a lot of pride in. Yeah. Trying to get the kids excited about Columbus. And now we see kids like Sean Corrali and Jack Roslovic, Carson Meyer, 3 Blue Jackets right there that grew up kind of in the minor hockey that we were trying to grow. But my first couple of years, I had Ray Whitney come in, and he was the captain, and then it was Luke Richardson was the captain, and then Adam Foote came in, he was the captain, and those were 3 pretty good leaders to learn from. And I remember when Adam Foote got traded back to Colorado, he was our captain. And later that day, I believe it was Ken Hitchcock calling me and letting me know that we were going to meet tomorrow, and I was going to be the next captain of the Columbus Blue Jackets. And it was a dream. When I think about just being an NHL hockey player, and then you put a C on your jersey, a lot of weight comes with it. I was also pretty young at the time too, but I remember Adam Foote called me, and he expressed that he got traded, and he just explained to me that this is my team now, and I have to lead in my own way, and I wasn't going to be like him. Adam Foote was a high intense guy that would come in and call guys out, and I wasn't like that. I was a more of a mold of a Steve Yzerman once I got to play with him and saw how he led. I would try to lead by example, and I would speak up when it needed to be something needed to be said. But the Columbus, or being the captain, was a huge deal, and I was lucky that I got to play in '06 Olympics and play with some great leaders over the years and get to know them off the ice too, so I can kind of mold my own form of leadership off those guys.
You mentioned Jack Roslovic, and I want to follow up on that. He's one of the great stories of what you did to that Columbus community. I know you're a humble guy and you hate to talk about that. Can you tell us the story about the Roslovic bobblehead? Was it a bobblehead doll or a hockey figurine? Or tell us the story about that.
Yeah,
and give
so
a little background from where Roslovic is from, so that people understand why it matters so much.
yeah. So Jack grew up here in Columbus and was obviously a Blue Jacket fan and got drafted to the Winnipeg Jets, and then we got him in the Line A and PLD
trade.
PLD trade.
Yeah.
And Jack would pop his head up in the offices, and he came by my office one day, and he said his mom was cleaning his childhood room, and he found this McFarlane figure of me, and on the figure he said, or on the McFarlane figure said, happy birthday, Jack. And he's like, my mom got this sign for me when I was 10 years old. And he's like, I wanted to bring it to you and see if you want it. And I said, yeah, I'll take it. And I leave it on my desk now as a conversation piece, which is pretty cool. And just a quick another story. When I got traded to Boston at the end of my career, they put me in the stall right beside Sean Crawley. And Sean also grew up in Columbus, and he looked over to me and he's like, I don't want this to be weird or anything, but I used to have a poster of you in my bedroom, and now
you and Farrah Fawcett.
Yeah, right. I was like, I had a little different posters, but no. So it's fun, and you know what, I take a lot of pride in where this Columbus minor hockey organization is now, and how many kids and my son plays in it. So it's pretty cool to see it grow.
It's funny because you're telling that story. I had Guy Carbonneau on the show last week, and he talks about the fact that in his last year in the NHL, he was actually sitting on the bench behind Brendan Morrow, who ended up they were teammates with Brendan Morrow, who ended up marrying his daughter. Your kids are younger than that. I'm sure that hasn't happened yet, but just wait, brother. You hang around the Blue Jackets organization long enough, and people will be hunting around your kids, and then you're gonna have to be the dad that's protecting the kids. So anyway, I thought that was pretty funny with Carbo. You mentioned getting traded. You had a great run with the Jackets. You helped lead them to their first ever playoff appearance, and then in the summer of 2012, you get traded to the New York Rangers, which ended up being a good run because you ended up being in the Stanley Cup final. You had a career year. You mentioned earlier you had a career year, 42 goals in 2015. What was that experience like with the Rangers and being in that Cup final? Because they did their best to shut you down in terms of offensively, because you were the prolific sniper and everybody had to work to shut you down.
Yeah, you know what? It was when I signed my 8-year deal in 2010 with the Blue Jackets. I thought I was gonna, finish off
Lifer.
being a Blue Jacket, and
yeah.
But obviously things didn't work out that way. And now I'm back with the Blue Jackets, and I love it here. But I wouldn't change my time in New York for anything. I mean, being a Ranger, getting to play at MSG, it was incredible. The success was great. Getting to go to the finals was great. But I was 28, I think, at the time, or 27, whatever it was, when I first went to New York, and a lot of those things were new to me. I only played 4 playoff games for my whole career at the time. And it was tough. It was an adjustment. I wish I had more experience at the time for playoff hockey so I could adjust even better, because sometimes it was a struggle in the playoffs, and I can admit that. I would have good regular seasons, and then come the playoffs, it was just the next level that I didn't learn as an 18-year-old or as a 20-year-old or as a 23 or 24-year-old. I was kind of learning on the go there, and we had some success and went to the finals and went to a couple conference finals. Obviously, we didn't get the main goal done of winning a Stanley Cup, which I wish we did. But for those 6 years in New York, I wouldn't change it for anything. And I think Wayne Gretzky said it once, but he said every hockey player should see how it feels like to be a Ranger.
Agreed. Playing in that building, the most famous sports building in the world. Certainly an interior one. We're in conversation with Rick Nash, 6-time NHL All Star, 2-time Olympic gold medalist. This is the 7-Eleven Overtime Podcast. I'm your host, Gino Retta. One of the difficult things as a broadcaster to have to watch, as a fan to have to watch, and I'm sure first and foremost for you, the difficulty of it was the number of head injuries that you had to suffer through. It was hard. It was really hard to watch. And really it was is the era. So many people, Eric Lindros saw his career shortened way too quickly because of head injuries. And you way too early, you were just 34 years old. You decided, I can't do this anymore. This is not good for me for my long-term health. What was that like for you to go through something like that where you were still scoring, you were still producing, and you knew I got to take care of myself long term for the rest of my life here?
Yeah, you know what? It was a tough decision, and it took a little while with a lot of talks with the doctors and with my agent Joe Resnick, and obviously my family. You know what? One of the most frustrating things was I couldn't play the same way I wanted to play.
Yeah.
When I came in the league, I would take pucks to the net, I would finish my checks, I would go hard into the corners, and I still feel like at the time I could still play and get stuff done, but I couldn't be that power forward that I wanted to be. And if I wasn't at my very best and I was putting myself at risk from not playing the way that I should be, then I felt like it was time.
Yeah.
I remember playing my last few games in Boston in the playoffs against Tampa and still getting tons of opportunities and scoring goals. And then it was my first time as a UFA, and it was getting all these calls and all this excitement and still being able to make some really good money and
Yeah.
sign long term. And at the end of the day, it wasn't fair to me. It wasn't fair to my kids. And it wasn't fair to the NHL organizations that were trying to do this when they couldn't get the best me that I could be,
Right.
because of second guessing yourself when you have that many head injuries. So,
Yeah.
looking back, would I still love to be playing? For sure. You can't simulate the rushes that I felt on the ice after hockey. But when I get to go on the ice with my son now, or I get to throw a ball with him or pick him up and put him on the playground, when who knows how bad the next concussion would have been, I'm at peace with my decision. As
Completely.
much as I miss the game, my kids and my family are the most important thing to me.
Awesome. How are you feeling now? Is everything okay? Are you back fully?
Yeah, I mean, I'm back fully. I still have a few symptoms here and there, but once you start talking to guys that retire that have had multiple concussions, and you hear some of the things they're going through, I'm doing great. I have
Awesome.
I have no issues, and starting to get back on the ice, and we're doing a lot of alumni stuff now. And Jody Shelley's growing our alumni program, and I think we got 15 guys that live back in Columbus. So I'm not as fast as I used to be, or my hands don't work the way they used to, but I love getting back on the ice, because the one thing you do miss once you retire is the camaraderie with the guys, and
Yeah.
and that was one of the hardest adjustments too.
You still do get to enjoy some of that though, because you hang out with these guys. You're living now in Columbus. You're working in the organization as a director of player development. Um, you just had your jersey retired, number 61, retired to the rafters. You retired, obviously, as the all-time leading scorer, games played in franchise history. What was that? What was that moment like when you saw the very emotional words that you shared when you saw your number going up to the rafters? What was that like for you?
Yeah, the jersey retirement was definitely up there with the two gold medals, and the draft, and going to the Stanley Cup Finals. It's right there to think that number 61 will be in the rafters forever was the coolest thing. And now when I bring my kids to Disney on Ice, or we go to a kids concert, and they look up, that's probably the coolest thing it is now that my number's up
Yeah.
there. But that night was so special. And we talked about, we had Doug MacLean come back. We had Ken Hitchcock. I had tons of former players and former teammates come. It was a special night, just to think that I achieved that with a lot of my teammates and former coaches and things. But it's definitely highlighted my career. And just to speak on the camaraderie quickly, I am honestly so thankful for Yarmo and the Blue Jacket organization,
Yarmo
and John
Kikalainen, the general
Davidson.
manager. Yeah.
Yeah, Yarmo Kikalainen, the general manager, and John Davidson, our president, and Basil McRae, our assistant GM. They brought me in to, they didn't have to, but they brought me in, and I learned the business for 2 years as Yarmo's special assistant. And then Yarmo gave me the prospects and the development. And like you touched on there for a second, that has helped so much to have that newfound camaraderie with this hockey ops team than just kind of being retired and trying to find my ways. And it's very important that the PA and the NHL have these programs that they do have to help these retired players, because it's tough.
Yeah, you were the face of the organization as a player. You elevated its status internationally and drew attention to a smaller market team that otherwise wouldn't have had that kind of attention. I can't imagine where the Jackets organization would be had you not been a huge part of it for that decade plus that you were there. You built it in the community from a player perspective, and now the management route. It's interesting because out of all the guys I've had so far on the show, and we've spoken to Zdeno Chara, Guy Carbonneau, Paul Henderson, and all these guys, only a few of them, Marty Brodeur being one of them, have said they were really interested in the management thing. And Marty's now making his way up through the organization. I get the sense that is a real goal for you. You've made your way from special advisor to Jarmo to director of player development. Could we one day see Rick Nash as a general manager in the National Hockey League? Is that ultimately a goal you'd like to see attained?
For sure. That's a goal. I don't know if we'll ever see it, but especially with my last experience with Hockey Canada and building that team that we last year at the World Championships along with Shane Doan and doing the assistant GM duties and losing in the finals and overtime to Finland. It was tough, but that just kind of created even more of a fire in my belly to work my way up in the management. Now, in saying that, I want to be one of those guys that kind of experiences all the different jobs.
Well, you're still young though. You still got time, right?
That's what I mean. I want to. Jarmo sent me on a bunch of recruiting trips, college free agents, CHL free agents. Did a lot of pro scouting. Now I moved on to development. So I want to take a while to learn all the different positions in the hockey ops and work my way up as it's deserved, I guess. I don't want to be handed anything. I don't think I deserve to be handed anything. I want to know the business side inside and out. And but yeah, at the end of the day, I'm still young. I'm 38. I got a lot of time and just trying to grow with experiences like the Hockey Canada ones and hopefully someday kind of work my way to the top.
Listen, if you have the work ethic and management that you had in coming into the game, I got to see the kind of stuff, the extra effort. It didn't just come naturally for you. You worked your tail off to accomplish what you did. Listen, it's been so great catching up with you again, Rick. I got nothing but the best memories of the stuff that you have accomplished and wish you nothing but the best as you take this next step now in management and the next level of your career that you want to hit. Good luck with that. I appreciate you doing this, man.
Hey, anytime. I feel like my career and will always be tied to yours, and in some sort of way, it always comes up whenever I tell those draft stories. So it's always fun to talk to you, and I've always respected and appreciated everything you've done. Talking about me and just for the game of hockey. So it's great to catch up.
Thanks, Rick. Two-time Olympic gold medalist, six-time NHL All Star, director of player development for the Columbus Blue Jackets. And who knows, future general manager in the NHL? We'll see. Rick Nash. The Overtime Podcast is proudly presented by 7-Eleven. Before leaving the rink, order your favorite Slurpee, fresh, 100% premium Arabica coffee, hot from the oven pizza and wings, pint of ice cream, or even a carton of milk, eggs, and loaf of bread from the 7 Now app, and Team 7-Eleven will have your order ready for pickup 24/7. Hey, if you missed any parts of the show, don't worry. Visit our website at theovertimepodcast.ca, where you can both listen and subscribe to future shows. 7-Eleven's Overtime Podcast can be found on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, iTunes Podcasts, or at any of your favorite podcast platforms. Until next week, I'm Gino Retta saying so long, hockey fans, and thanks for joining us on the 7-Eleven Overtime Podcast.